Monument Valley is a top-down puzzle game taking place in a series of colourful dioramas. You play as Ida, or Ida, I'll just call her Ida for this, a wandering princess on a quest that's fraught with surreal puzzles and complex challenges that'll leave you in total amazement. Before I continue, I just want to make a quick note. For those who may be unaware, Monument Valley was originally a mobile game released in 2014. This version, the Panoramic Edition, is its PC debut. I haven't actually played the mobile version, so all of my comments stated in this review are purely based on its PC version. With that out of the way though, the review. While it's certainly not its main selling point, the game does have an interesting story. As I said before, you play as a princess called Ida, and you get to experience her journey of forgiveness. In her way are the Crow people, habitants of this world who seek to interfere in her quest. As far as storytelling goes, however, that's more or less it. The narrative is told in a fragmented way, through various dialogue exchanges, as well as scenes that are generally open for interpretation. That last part is what makes it intriguing to me though. There's a lingering sense of mystery throughout the game. It almost feels post-apocalyptic, in a cutesy, relaxing way. Its main focus is its gameplay, but that's something I'll get to in a bit. First, I want to talk about the presentation. Like I said before, the majority of the levels take place on a diorama each, so the space you can move around in is limited. Despite their compact size, however, they are absolutely gorgeous to look at. They don't have layers upon layers of detail, but they do follow a simple yet highly effective appearance that's bolstered by a vibrant colour scheme that immediately catches the eye. Then there are the levels that sit in the foreground of greater landscapes that had me blown away. Each environment has received special care and consideration, not just for looking good, but also to immerse you. Just the presence of the stunning architecture invites speculation into the game's world. Who were the people that used to live here? What happened to this seemingly peaceful place? Why is it so quiet? All this in the opening segments of the game. Yeah, it's safe to say a positive first impression was made. I think one of the main aspects that makes these environments as captivating as they are is the tranquil atmosphere. Even when the game is at its most challenging, it's still oddly relaxing. Everything about the sound is soft, the music is gentle, and the ambient sounds such as the rain and the wind almost make it all feel cozy. One detail I liked is that every interaction you make plays a sound that fits with the music, in a way that feels perfectly in place, as if it was supposed to happen at that moment. Everything about Monument Valley's presentation is full of style and charm. When it comes to the actual meat, the gameplay loop and the puzzles themselves, it transforms into something even more fascinating. Beyond their pretty appearances, you'll quickly realise that these levels are more complex than they initially come across, and that's due to the fact that, in order to solve the game's many puzzles, you will need to interact with parts of the environment. This is done through various methods, but they all have visual indicators that make it clear that something is interactable. For example, dials allow you to rotate parts of the level, granting you a new perspective, whereas blocks with circles placed on them are movable, presenting new pathways. Over time, the game introduces new quirks to the gameplay that spice up the challenge, while also keeping it refreshing. When taken individually, these do appear small, nothing mind-blowing. However, when you take all of them as a group and combine them with the way the levels are composed, you have a creative stroke of genius that never ceases to be impressive. Everything about it is seamless too. I only ever encountered one bug. There were countless times where I'd go through a sequence, sit back and think, how on earth did the developers do that? It's the kind of presentation that feels like you're observing magic unfold on the screen. From a first glance, some of these levels look like they might be highly complex and challenging to play through. Going in, I wasn't sure how well I was going to fare since puzzle games have always been 50-50 for me. I'm happy to say that Monument Valley has found the perfect balance when it comes to difficulty. For starters, the game is quite easy to access. Movement-wise, the levels are based on a grid, so in order to move, you just click on the spot you want to go to. Likewise, all of the interactable parts of the environment are affected using the same method. The only thing you have to keep in mind with this is your perspective. You can only move the character to an area that you can currently see, so if the path goes around a corner, you'll have to find the right angle in order to continue. It's not hard, but it's something that becomes an engaging obstacle in and of itself. Were there times where I got stuck? Sure, but that wasn't a common occurrence, and when it did happen, it wasn't for very long. Besides, it was fun to figure out how to overcome a roadblock, especially with the satisfaction that comes after it, followed by the subsequent, "Wow, that's trippy," or "Wow, the devs are really clever." Essentially what I'm getting at is, it doesn't matter if you're not good at puzzle games, you should be alright with this one. I mentioned before that you are not the only inhabitant of this world. A species referred to as the Crow are the dominant occupants, and you'll often find them sitting around, sometimes watching you. There are cases though where they wander around the levels. While they aren't hazardous to the player, you do have to find a way around them, as you simply cannot just walk past them. How you do this is entirely dependent on the level you're on, and just like with all the other challenges, the game manages to find unique ways of dealing with them. I'm gonna be honest, I'm really struggling to find things that I dislike about this game. I guess the gear that allows you to rotate parts of a level can be a bit slippery to use sometimes, but beyond that, there really is nothing I can criticize. It's one of the most creative experiences I have ever played. So, how do I conclude this? I wasn't expecting to love this game as much as I do. I knew nothing about it before it started, other than the fact that it had puzzles in it. All I can say is just how phenomenal the whole thing is. Every facet of it has been executed to such a high degree of quality. It's simple, yet at the same time magnificent looking visuals that smoothly blend in with the charming atmosphere, coupled with the imaginative and highly engaging challenges, make Monument Valley a triumphant innovation in the puzzle genre. It could very well be the best puzzle game I've ever played. Thanks for watching. If you liked this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like, and if you want to see more indie game reviews like this one, then consider subscribing. Let me know if there's any indie games you'd like to see a review for. I'm open to more or less any at this point. Until the next one, see you next time. Bye. Monument Valley 2 is a top-down puzzle game and a sequel to what was possibly my favourite puzzle game ever. I'm quite happy to say that this second entry to the series also lives up to an impeccably high standard set by its predecessor. One of the main things that sets this game apart from the previous installment is its bigger emphasis on storytelling. It's much less fragmented and is easier to follow, with more cutscenes and relatable themes spread throughout. Whereas the first game's narrative was about forgiveness, this one tells a coming-of-age story centered around a mother and her child. The first few levels start off with the two of them travelling together, which ends in a rather emotional scene that sees the child setting off on their own journey. What happens after that is sort of a split narrative where you see both of their adventures over a prolonged period of time. One of the main talking points of the story is that both characters still have a lot to learn, regardless of what stage of life they're in. While I enjoyed the vague storytelling in Monument Valley 1, I definitely preferred this approach that the developers have taken to the narrative, even if it isn't as long. It makes the game feel more moving, and I found it much easier to form a connection to the characters. Another aspect that I found to be an improvement was the visual quality, even if it's only slightly better. The levels in the first game were gorgeous, and that still rings true here, with some grander environments and impressive lighting techniques. Each map is full of vibrancy and colour. The minimalist diorama style still works fantastically, and there's a high attention to detail. The crow people aren't present in this one, so there is slightly less life to the levels, but they do have these cute little lizards. The almost sombre atmosphere is still prevalent, and it continues to be incredibly relaxing. The soundtrack still carries that vague, post-apocalyptic vibe, while also enhancing the cinematic elements of the cutscenes. To no surprise at all, Monument Valley 2's presentation contains no disappointment whatsoever, and in some ways even surpasses that of its predecessor. It's able to grab your attention almost instantly, and is assured to keep you immersed. The gameplay in Monument Valley 2 is quite similar to that of the first game, and a lot of the core mechanics remain untouched. There are, however, puzzles that are presented in new ways that manage to make for a refreshing experience. One of the major differences is the introduction of a second character. The challenges this poses aren't that difficult, but they do require you to take how and where you move into consideration. Later on, when control of both characters individually is given to you, the complexity begins to increase. I honestly wish the game was slightly longer, just so that mechanic could be explored more. What's noticeable about the puzzles in this game is that they do feel easier. The first game had a perfect balance when it came to difficulty, but I feel like the sequel has gone towards an easier direction. It's a shame because the last few levels do start to become harder. The absence of the crow people also takes away a major level component. There aren't any moving obstacles anymore, and you'll often be able to breeze through levels relatively quickly. Still, the puzzles that are on offer are still engaging, and there are some spectacular levels that are just as awe-inspiring as some of the ones you'd find in the previous game. What I really liked was that there weren't any that felt like reskins. Each one is new, unique, and creatively designed. Best of all, Totem is back. I probably should have mentioned him in my review of the first game. He's a character that you meet that serves as both a tool and a companion. You can drag him around across the level and can use him as a bridge or a pillar to reach a distant destination. Levels can still be modified in the same ways as before, with rotatable dials and movable platforms. These, however, are introduced in a more complex way, with more elements being manipulated by these contraptions. There's also a new magnet tool that you briefly see towards the end of the game that's pretty cool. So overall, despite the reduced difficulty level, Monument Valley 2 is still fantastic to play, with a wide variety of charming levels that'll certainly keep you engaged. Honestly, after finishing both of these games, I'm left wanting more. They presented unique puzzles situated in beautiful environments that generated wonder and imagination, and they did this to a near perfect standard. Luckily, a third game has been announced and I couldn't be more excited for it. If you haven't played these games yet, I implore you to buy them. There isn't anything quite like them. The Steam versions contain all of the extra content and they are both fairly priced. These are the best puzzle games I have ever played, and I have no doubt about that. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, as always, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more like it, then be sure to subscribe. Let me know in the comments what games you'd like to see a review for. Until the next one, see you next time. Bye. Monument Valley 3 is a top-down puzzle game and long-awaited entry to the Monument Valley series, known for its magical presentation and cozy atmosphere. This new title is no exception, providing a compelling story, some beautiful visuals, and an incredibly immersive experience. Before continuing with this video, I highly recommend watching my reviews for the previous Monument Valley games, especially if you are new to the series, as they will give you enough context not only into the games themselves, but also of my connection to them. I really appreciate them. and in all honesty, they are my favourite puzzle games on the market, and some of my favourite indie games ever. I'm making that point clear because going into this game, I knew I was unlikely to be disappointed. If they were going to give us more of the same, I was going to be more than grateful for it. To my surprise, Monument Valley 3 has plenty of new things to offer. A new story, new visual backdrops, and some new and reimagined mechanics. While not exactly bursting with content, there is more to talk about here than there was with Monument Valley 2, for example. I'll begin with the story. Stories in this series have always had a strong emphasis on show, don't tell, but with each entry they have become sort of easier to read into. The narrative for this game is probably the easiest to understand. It also happens to be my favourite. You play as Nor, a young apprentice of the Lighthouse, a structure whose purpose is to guide ships to safe harbour, serving as a light in the dark and a beacon of safety. You and your teacher, the current keeper of the lighthouse, are tasked with keeping the light shining, but disaster ultimately strikes and the light begins to fade. Your quest is both a coming-of-age story and a mission to save the world and keep everybody safe. Watching and experiencing Nor's journey through this world and seeing them become more competent through each chapter is one of Monument Valley 3's major hallmarks. You see them at their highest and their lowest, and combining that with the series' unique presentation makes for a memorable experience. It may be blunter and more simple compared to the first game's narrative, but I found this one a lot easier to connect to, and the emotional beats hit harder here than they ever have before. A lot of it is thanks to the way it's all presented, but not solely for its visuals. Sound continues to play an important factor. There are moments that almost make it feel like you are playing a Pixar film. While the art style is far removed from them, the dreamy soundscape feels very reminiscent, and is easily one of the best aspects of not just this game, but the series as a whole. Seriously, don't sleep on these games. Every moment, every interaction has purpose. Everything you do makes a sound. There is intention in every action you make. It's pretty and comfortable, but very much driven into keeping you immersed. The atmosphere is a testament to the magic these developers have, and it's also something we are going to dive into next. Saying Monument Valley is all about the vibes isn't an entirely inaccurate statement. It does feel like a vibey game. Nothing has changed with this entry either. There's obviously a lot more to it, but if you were to play it for the vibes, you'll be more than satisfied. There is a lot that goes into generating those vibes, however. I've already talked about the audio. Everything about it is immersive. It's purposeful when it needs to be, melancholy when it wants to move you, or relaxing when it wants you to be in the zone. Those strings are not to be trifled with, because they have so much emotional power behind them. The other major component is the visual aesthetic. This is something that cements Monument Valley's identity. You can spot these games a mile away thanks to their visuals. Cutesy dioramas, or monuments as the games call them, situated in a colourful, sometimes awe-inspiring landscape. There's a definitive surrealist quality to these levels that makes them as impactful as they are. Take this one, for example, which takes place inside a massive sea creature. This kind of clever level design is what I love most about Monument Valley. The way it plays with your mind and makes you wonder how on earth something like that works. It brings a childlike joy to me because it reminds me how I felt playing games when I was younger. As I said in my review for Monument Valley 1, it looks like magic is unfolding on the screen, and it never ceases to amaze. What makes Monument Valley 3 stand out in the series is its setting. The vast majority of the game takes place on the ocean, making each level feel like a remote island in a vast watery expanse. In a way, levels feel more grandiose than they did before. There's a wider sense of scale and vulnerability to the way you play through them. You might have noticed by now that you can sail across the ocean. It's a really neat mechanic, which I will get into shortly, but it adds an extra layer of depth to the level design. Some levels have multiple islands that you need to go back and forth to, adding some complexity to their structure. It's not all ocean though, and there's plenty of variety in locations. Each chapter feels visually distinct, and that cleverness that's prevalent through levels in previous games remains a core factor here as well. There are plenty of wow moments to be had. Colour and lighting are absolutely top-notch in Monument Valley 3. They help drive the emotional impact of the story while also building the tranquil, though also sometimes intense, atmosphere. Visually, I think it's the best looking game in the series. It's everything we had before, just new and improved, and I think that statement can apply to the game as a whole. In terms of gameplay mechanics, Monument Valley 3 more or less plays the same. You click where you want to move, you solve environment-based puzzles by moving specific pieces of a level, and you try to approach challenges as technically as possible. The series never needed to have a boatload of mechanics because its entertainment factor stems from its creative design approach to levels. It is a question of how complex can they be, how crazy they look, how structurally unique they are. My opinion has always been that the series as a whole isn't overly challenging. I think, even after playing this, that the first game is the most challenging. This one has more or less the same difficulty as the second game. The only thing I will mention is that a free DLC is coming out later this year, so there is a chance that some of the puzzles in there could make this opinion change. Personally, this has never been an issue for me. I understand me saying that might raise a few eyebrows. It is a puzzle game, it's supposed to be challenging. That all depends on what you want from Monument Valley. These games are a triumph in their presentation, their atmosphere, their soundtracks, just their general vibe. That is enough for me to not care about very difficult puzzles. But if you are looking for a more challenging experience, and that is your number one priority, this will probably disappoint you, and that is completely fair. It's hard to describe what playing these games feels like to me because it's purely an emotional tether. Either way, it's something to keep in mind. That being said, there were quite a few moments that had me stop in my tracks for a bit, especially towards the end. That last chapter had me stumped more than once. You do have to approach these levels with an open mindset. Think ahead before you move. Some pathways twist to the point you are facing a completely different direction. Gravity has no meaning in Monument Valley. Alas, let's talk about the sailing. Totem is back once again, although this time he is now a boat that you can use to sail to different islands. He is now Boatem. That is his name now, and I will keep calling him that. Controlling Boatem is rather straightforward. You just drag towards which direction you want to sail to, and everything else plays out smoothly. It can be a bit finicky. It does feel meant for mobile devices, but it works, and it adds an interesting aspect to the gameplay. Altogether, there are 10 chapters, which I have thoughts on. The price for Monument Valley 3 is double the price of the first two games. I finished my playthrough in about 2 hours. As much as I love these games, none of them can justify this price. I'm glad there's more content down the line, which can make the price a bit more sensible, but it's still too much to ask. Nevertheless, if you are a fan of these games, I doubt you'll be disappointed with this new entry. It's the same Monument Valley we know and love, only with a fresh coat of paint, some stunning levels, and Boatem. He's the real MVP. Opening Monument Valley 3 for the first time felt like a homecoming in a weird way. These games are some of my favourites that I reviewed on this channel, and their connection to my channel is something that remains a constant to me. I have fond memories both playing and reviewing them, and I've been excited to do so for this one. I'm really glad to report that the magic hasn't withered away. These are some seriously talented developers who deserve more recognition. They have taken what they've learnt with the first two games and built something that feels even more refined, more enchanting, and more beautiful. Each level is a living, breathing painting, exemplified by their soundscapes and simple, yet extremely effective presentation. This new world is just as mystical as the worlds that came before it. An easier to digest story might give it a stronger edge, and while it isn't the most difficult game in the world, it is still filled with challenging and memorable moments. My only points for concern are its price tag and the potential risk of players wanting more from it than just cozy vibes. Nevertheless, go in with an open mind, and you are in for a remarkable ride. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Like I said before, check out my reviews for the other Monument Valley games if you want to see more of this series. Subscribe if you want to see more reviews for indie games, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.